What's up guys, I'm Lee Morse with Fstoppers.com and you are about to watch an excerpt from our wedding photography tutorial. In this tutorial, we're covering every single thing that we've learned about weddings, having shot weddings for over 10 years now. And if you're just getting started with wedding photography, hopefully this tutorial will answer all of the questions that you have. And if you've been shooting weddings for the last few years, hopefully this tutorial will take your work and your business to the next level. If you'd like to see some more free excerpts from this tutorial, you can click the links here, but this excerpt is all about pricing your wedding photography. This is one of the most difficult things that every wedding photographer has to deal with at the beginning of their careers and throughout their entire business. If you'd like to learn more about the full tutorial, you can head over to fstoppers.com/store. Otherwise, enjoy this free excerpt. So now guys, it's time to talk about pricing. And this is one of the most complicated and confusing things that every photographer has to deal with, because basically you're just making up a number. It has nothing to do with how long you've been doing anything. It has nothing to do with the gear that you've used or you are using. It just has everything to do with how confident are you that you can get the price that you're asking for. And there's wedding photographers that charge 50 bucks and there's wedding photographers that charge $50,000 to shoot a wedding. What's the difference there? Is the $50,000 wedding photographer really that much better? I don't think so. And so now we're going to dive into all of the little details that go into pricing your wedding photography. So believe it or not, pricing your photography is going to create a value for your photography more than anything else, more than what your pictures look like, more than what your portfolio looks like, more than what your website or your business card looks like. People don't really know what good photography is, but when they see a high price tag, all of a sudden it makes sense to them that, oh man, this guy must be good. So for example, let's say you go into a jewelry store and you're looking for a diamond ring, and you go into a Tiffany's. You know Tiffany's is a great name, and there are two diamond rings side by side. You don't know anything about diamond rings, but you have to get one because you're about to ask your girlfriend to marry you. And you see two diamond rings there and they look exactly the same. One of them costs $99 and one of them costs $15,000. What are you going to assume? As somebody that knows nothing about what diamonds are, you couldn't look at that with a microscope and decide if it was real or fake or anything. What are you going to assume simply by the price? Everybody's going to assume the exact same thing. The $100 ring is fake, and the $15,000 ring is amazing, and I would be so proud to give that to my girlfriend. This is how much I love her, and I think she totally deserves it, and if I don't have enough money, maybe I'm gonna save up a little bit more because that's what she deserves. But think about it. It's the exact same product. You can't tell that it's any different. It looks the exact same to you, and maybe it is the exact same. But just because the price is different, all of a sudden you perceive that it's worth more. You think that it has more value. In reality, a ring does absolutely nothing. It's just something that you put on your finger and look at, and if it looks the exact same, is it really worth any more or less than another ring that's the exact same? That's up to you, but that's very important for you to keep in mind when it comes to pricing your own photography, because chances are the people that come to your website that are looking for a wedding photographer, they don't know anything about wedding photography, but they do have a certain budget in mind. And if your prices are high, they are automatically going to assume that you are a talented photographer and you can be trusted. So the strange thing about wedding photography is that the client who is booking you, in most cases the bride, in many cases is not the person that's actually paying for the photography. In most cases, the bride's father is going to pay for the photography. So that's really important to think about when you're meeting with somebody and they're talking about your prices, and you have to say, yes, I want 5, I want 10, I want $15,000 to shoot your wedding for one day. I want $15,000. How are you gonna say that with confidence and feel like, yes, I deserve $15,000 for that one day of shooting? Well, keep in mind, if that bride actually has $15,000 to spend on a wedding photographer, she's going to spend it. You don't have to convince her that you're worth $15,000. If she's talking to you and she knows your prices already, she's not gonna try to convince you to shoot her wedding for $1,000. Her dad's already given her $15,000 and she wants to find a photographer that meets that budget. Same thing goes for cheaper weddings as well. If you have a bride that's looking to spend $2,000, she's not gonna go on Craigslist and find the $200 wedding photographer. She's gonna find somebody that just perfectly meets her budget at $2,000 so that she feels like she got the best photography for the price that she could afford. So let me give you an example here. If you're a 16-year-old and your father's very wealthy and he says, here you go, you can have $50,000 to go buy your first car, are you gonna go to a Toyota dealership? Of course not. You're not even going to look at those cars, even though you could save $20,000 by getting a Toyota. You'd buy a very nice Toyota for $30,000 and you'd have $20,000 left over. That's not how people think when they're given things. They say, I actually would like to spend $55,000 on this new BMW. If anything, they're gonna go back to their dad and go, oh, I found my dream car, but it's a little bit over. Can I please have a little bit more money, Dad? They're never gonna say, man, we can save some money here by going a little bit cheaper. So you've got to keep that in mind with your photography. Just because you're cheaper than the next guy, that's actually going to be a deterrent for you. You will lose jobs because you're too cheap more than you will lose jobs because you're too expensive. So I can remember very vividly the first wedding that I ever shot, and I didn't want to be a wedding photographer, but in my college I was always the guy with the camera. And so when a couple of friends of mine got engaged, they asked me, hey Lee, will you shoot our wedding? You know, we're not spending much on this thing, but you have a camera, will you do it? And at that point I charged $250, and I was honestly really excited about that. Man, I can get $250 for a day's work. That's a great deal. And I gave him a disc afterwards with all the JPEG images, and that was it. And I thought, okay, this is gonna be my first and only wedding. I don't really want to do this. I want to be a commercial photographer. But while I was still in school, another couple of friends heard, oh, you shot those guys' wedding? Will you shoot ours as well? This one was a little bit fancier of a wedding. They were spending a little bit more money. And it took all of the confidence I had to say, I want $1,000 to shoot your wedding. And I honestly didn't really want to shoot their wedding. So it was kind of a way for me to say, like, look, just get somebody else to shoot your wedding because I know you're not going to spend $1,000. But guess what? They said, okay, $1,000 sounds fair. And I was shocked. I couldn't believe that somebody would pay me $1,000 to shoot for a few hours. Like, this is my dream come true, you know? How could you ask for a better job? And so I shot that wedding for $1,000 thinking this is as good as it gets, but I don't want to be a wedding photographer. I'm not going to do this anymore. And I moved to Charleston. I started assisting a photographer in town that shot a lot of weddings. And again, another friend called me. This time I said, I want $1,500. And thinking again, there's no way this could actually happen. But it did. They said, okay, that sounds fair. And what I realized was $1,500 for wedding photography was still really, really cheap. So they thought they were getting a good deal. I was shocked I was getting $1,500. Everybody was happy. And at that point I realized, man, I can make so much more money shooting weddings than I can, of course, assisting. But at the time I was also shooting for magazines and I was making, $200 for a photo shoot, whereas I could shoot a wedding and make $1,500. Maybe this is something that I want to do. So at that point I put a wedding photography website together and I started trying to figure out all this stuff on my own, and that's when I really started making my prices public and figuring out how much I should charge for everything.
When I first started booking my own weddings, I had only been assisting Lee maybe 6 months to a year. So I was brand new into photography and I knew nothing about wedding photography at all. But I treated my wedding business really as a part-time job. I just wanted something else out there that I knew could make me some money because my aspirations were not to go into wedding photography at all at the time. And so I set my prices at, I think, $1,000 for 4 hours. And I think I had an album for maybe $500. And so as I was meeting with potential clients and booking those first weddings for the first year, I think the third girl that I met with, she booked me for $2,500. And I remember sitting in that meeting thinking, oh, this is going really, really well. She didn't just get the 4 hours of coverage, she wanted the entire 8 hours that I was offering. And then on top of that, she booked my album. So all of a sudden, most of the weddings that I was booking were $1,000, maybe $1,400. And here, the third meeting I had, I booked a wedding for $2,500. And I know for a fact that the only reason that I was able to do that was that she respected the prices that I had, my work was good enough, and I really legitimately felt comfortable in charging that amount of money. And looking back, that money wasn't that much at all. I mean, my starting prices now for 4 hours is at $2,100, but back then that was a lot of money for me, and that was the first year that I was booking weddings. So I just really want to remind you guys how important it is for you to believe that you're worth the price that you put on your work those first couple years, because you're going to be shooting weddings fairly cheap, but you know where you're going and you know the skill sets that you have. And we're going to talk a lot about assisting, and that was the big benefit that I had, was that I had assisted a great photographer in Lee for 6 months to a year, and I was able to use those pictures in my own portfolio. So all of these things came together, and I was able to figure out a price that worked for me. And because I started booking those weddings that were up to $2,500 that first year, it made it a whole lot easier for me to start charging even more and raising my prices more and more each year.
So if you're just getting started as a wedding photographer, you are probably wondering, what in the world should I charge at the beginning? And I can't tell you that exact number because I have no idea what weddings in your market are like, but I can tell you from experience, I've helped multiple photographers here in town get started with their business, and I tell them to start around $800 to $1,000 for 4 hours of coverage and then go up from there. That price has worked really well for my friends starting their businesses because it's low enough to get people excited who are looking for a deal, but it's not so cheap that nobody has any respect for you. And then once you've booked a few weddings at that low price, I would suggest quickly raising your prices as you feel comfortable doing it. One thing to keep in mind when you're pricing your wedding photography is that you need to appeal to people with a low budget and a high budget within a certain range. Obviously, you're not going to charge $1,000 or $50,000, but if your average wedding is around $2,000, then I would suggest starting at $1,500 and maybe going all the way up to $6,000. And the reason for that is if somebody comes to you with $5,000, even though you on average shoot weddings for $2,000, wouldn't you like to shoot a wedding for $5,000? But if you don't have a $5,000 package available, you're going to lose that client. And the nice thing about having your prices slightly cheaper than your average wedding is that you could have somebody come to you and say, oh, I just don't have 2,000 bucks, but if it were up to you, you might still enjoy making 1,500 bucks that day. So you're going to appeal to that client as well. You'll notice my prices on my website have a massive range. 4 hours for a wedding day is $2,800, and then my complete package is $12,500. So as you can imagine, that kind of reaches a lot of different clientele, and I literally book $2,800 weddings all the time, and I've also booked weddings for $12,500. So there's a ton of different things that you can add to your wedding photography, whether it's a photo booth, albums, prints, engagement sessions. All of these things can completely change the price of your wedding photography depending on how much your client wants. And again, you don't have to do all of these things all of the time, but it's nice to have them available. If you hate setting up a photo booth, you can raise the price high enough to where it's actually worth setting it up every time. And you'll find that when you do get it, getting the extra money is worth it. But if somebody doesn't want to book it, that's fine with you. They're still going to book you as their wedding photographer as well. Think about a camera company like Nikon or Canon. Think about all the DSLRs that they make every single year that hit every price point. You can get a point and shoot, or you can start at a digital Rebel with Canon, or you can start at the D3200 with Nikon. I think that's like a $600 or $700 camera. And then you keep going up and up and up until all of a sudden you have a $6,000 camera. What Nikon and Canon are doing is creating a product for every specific budget. And I think that's what you need to focus on when you're setting your prices as a wedding photographer. So if you've looked at any other wedding photographers' websites, you've probably noticed that most wedding photographers hide their prices. They usually have a starting point, like my packages start at $2,500 and go up from there, but you have to contact them to actually get the prices. And if you want to book as many weddings as possible, that's probably a great way to do things, because you can get somebody contacting you asking for your price list. Once you have their contact information, you can set up a time to meet with them in person, you can call them and check in, And you also have the ability to negotiate your prices if you want and lower them so that you book the job. If your prices are available online and somebody says right off the bat, I don't think I can afford that guy, they're just gonna leave. So there are pluses to not putting your prices on your website. So if you've been to my website or if you've been to Patrick's website, you've probably noticed that we publicize our price list. And the reason for that is with Fstoppers and all these other things that we have going on, we don't want to spend the time to talk to every single person that comes to our website. I don't want to have to talk to somebody on the phone or meet them in person if they can't afford my prices. And so by publicizing my prices, what I'm doing is I'm weeding out everybody who can't afford me or who might even be on the fence. And I admit I'm probably losing weddings because of that. I feel like I book enough weddings and I make enough money to easily survive, and I don't need to hustle to book every single client at this point. So let's talk wedding numbers, okay? If you go to costofwedding.com, you can type in your zip code and see what the average wedding cost in your area. It's gonna be probably a shocking number to you. So I live in Charleston, South Carolina, and the average wedding costs $25,000. That's honestly shocking to me. I know we spend a lot of money on weddings down here, but when you think the average, that's crazy. I mean, there's so many people that just go get eloped, or they do a wedding that costs $500 or even less than $500. I would think that number would be so much lower. If you go up to New York City, the average wedding costs $37,000. So if you have $37,000, you are going to allot a little bit of that chunk of money for each of your vendors and everything that goes into planning a wedding. Now, if you look at wedding magazines or blogs, you're gonna find that the average website says that you should spend 15% of your wedding budget on photography. Now, of course, that price totally ranges, but 15% is the standard. So if you have $37,000 to spend on a wedding, you should spend $5,500 on your wedding photographer. So if you charge $1,000 for photography and somebody is creating a wedding that's going to cost around $40,000 and the highest price that you have on your website is $1,000, guess what? It doesn't matter how good your pictures are because you are a cheap wedding photographer to them. They are going to spend every bit of that money because that's what they plan to spend. And so you need to price yourself accordingly. If you want to book weddings that are around $40,000, then you need to have packages that are around $5,000. That's just the way it goes. So in my area in Charleston, the average wedding costs about $25,000, and that means the average wedding photographer should charge around $3,700. This is a good way to think. You can actually work backwards. So you can check out your area, see how much weddings cost, and that will give you a good idea of how much wedding photography in your area should cost. Depending on how much you charge for wedding photography, that is going to be what type of clientele books you. If you charge $10,000 for wedding photography, then you're going to book very expensive weddings that are very upscale, and they're gonna have great decorations, great cake, great dress. If you charge $1,000 for wedding photography, you're going to end up booking a lot cheaper weddings. They're gonna be in their local church, or they're gonna be in a Shriners Club, or they're gonna take place outside. And that's fine. You just have to decide what type of weddings you want to market yourself to and know who your clientele should be.
Now, this isn't always true in every environment and every market, but one thing that I've found true, at least here in Charleston and a lot of other places that I've talked to wedding photographers, is if you charge less money, typically you can book many more weddings than if you charge a lot more money. So if you're at the $1,000 price point, you may book 40 weddings a year and you made $40,000. So to make $40,000 at a $10,000 price range, you might only book 4 weddings if there's only 4 people that have the budget in your market for that. So at the price point that I'm at right now, I'm really kind of in the middle of the road. I think my average wedding's probably about $3,500. And I aim to shoot about 20 to 30 weddings a year. And that allows me to do a lot of things with my lifestyle that I really appreciate at this point. But I know a lot of photographers who they charge a lot less, but they may have a whole team of photographers. They actually may have multiple people in their business shooting multiple weddings that day, and they make a lot more money than I do. So don't think that you have to charge a ton of money to make a good living. You can go in many different directions with this. You could have a smaller price package and then offer adjunct photographers who shoot the wedding. Or you could be the guy who shoots the highest priced wedding, but you're gonna shoot a lot less of them. I like a lot of free time. I don't wanna spend tons of time editing and shooting 52 weddings a year. That would just totally drive me crazy, and I think I would actually lose the passion that I have for photography if I had to shoot that much. So it's really about balancing the amount of income that you want to bring in and the free time that you want to have.
The interesting thing about wedding photography and pricing is that you would think the higher your prices are, the more stress there would be. Man, if I'm going to charge $20,000 to shoot a wedding, I can't imagine the pressure there. I've got to do such a good job and the client's going to be so demanding, when actually it's the complete opposite. When I was first getting started and my prices were relatively low, my clients were so much more demanding. Everything I did, they wanted more, they wanted it to be different, or they wanted it to be better. They didn't see me as an artist, they just saw me as a vendor. I was no better than the guy serving them drinks at their wedding. And they treated me like that. But as I got better and as my prices got higher and higher and higher, people started to see me as an artist, and they would treat me like that. Instead of saying, hey, photographer, go shoot this, they'd say, hey Lee, why don't you sit at our table and we're gonna have dinner for you and your assistants. Hey Lee, why don't you come on the dance floor and dance with us? Hey Lee, why don't you come do a shot with us? And I realized, man, this is so much easier because they trust me now. They never trusted me before. They were always looking at me thinking, this guy's kind of cheap, we've never really heard of him before. But now they have 100% faith in everything that I'm doing, and it's so much easier. The other thing that I noticed is that with cheaper weddings, the clients were much less reliable. They would break contracts, they would break up before the wedding, they would change the date, they would change the location, because they're not spending so much time and money planning their wedding. It's not as big of a deal. Once you start charging a little bit more and you get those clients that are spending $30,000 to $100,000 on their wedding, you're gonna find that they're much more reliable as clients. When you send them a contract, they're actually gonna send it back. When you write them an email, they're gonna email you back. And when you call them, they're gonna pick up the phone. I can't tell you how many times when I first got started, I would get people emailing me and calling me, we're so excited, we want you to be our wedding photographer, and then you send them a contract and it never comes back. And then you call them and they don't return your phone call. And you just assume, well, I guess they broke up or they hired somebody else or whatever. That's just the type of people that I was dealing with at the beginning. Once your prices get higher and higher, your clients are going to take their wedding that much more seriously because they've invested so much time and so much money into it. So basically, guys, I just want you to realize that the amount of money that you're getting paid and the amount of stress that you feel for the wedding, I don't feel like they coincide at all. One thing to keep in mind when you're first setting your prices is that you don't want to be too high. And the reason is that you can never go back. You can't say, I'm going to start at $5,000 for 4 hours and then book one wedding for the next 2 years and then say, oh man, this is kind of failing. I guess I'm going to lower my prices down to $1,000 for 4 hours. You can't do that. You already booked a wedding for $5,000 and that client is going to be furious that now you've lowered your prices. You have to only go up with your prices, especially if you want to publicize your prices, because everybody can see it. And if you drop your prices, everybody in town's going to know. As you shoot more weddings and as your business grows, people expect for your prices to go up. Your past clients are going to be excited that you cost more. One, they're gonna feel like, wow, we got a great deal when we hired him or her at the beginning of their career, but man, they really are a great photographer. I'm going to tell my friends about how they've grown and how their business is so much bigger now, and they should check this photographer out because they've got great things going on. You shouldn't feel guilty that your prices are going up. It's just a normal thing that happens with every successful business. So when wedding photographers used to shoot film, the way that they would price things is they would charge a certain amount to actually shoot the wedding, but then they would retain the negatives and you would have to buy prints from the photographer. So the wedding photography fee may not be that high, but if you wanted to actually get any prints, you're going to have to call that photographer back and order very expensive marked up prints. That is how things were done for years and years until digital came along and things really changed. With digital now, I can keep the negatives and I can give the digital negatives away. I can copy the files, so I can retain the images, I can use them for marketing, I can use them for my own albums, but I can also give them to the clients. For years, wedding photographers were not happy about this. They said, no, you're cheapening wedding photography by giving the files away. Why would you ever do that? But times changed, and now most wedding photographers at least have an option for you to buy all of the digital files. I would suggest looking at what other wedding photographers are doing in your area and at least starting out in a very similar fashion. I have personally decided that I want to give away the digital files with every single wedding that I shoot, and I don't charge any extra for that. I include it in the package. And the reason why I do that, it's actually two reasons why. One, I want my clients to be happy, and I want everything to be as simple as possible. I want to shoot a wedding. 2 weeks after the wedding, I want them to have a disc with all of the high-res images, and they can make all the prints or copy the pictures or use the pictures in any way that they want to. The other reason is a selfish reason, and that's that I don't want to have to deal with clients months or years down the road looking to buy some 4x6 print from me. I have shot literally hundreds of weddings for hundreds of different couples, and the thought of having to make prints for some of these people that I shot weddings for 7 years ago is horrifying to me. I've got other stuff going on, and I would much rather charge them a little bit more up front and not have to deal with them afterwards than, charge them a little bit less and then try to upsell them later. A lot of wedding photographers would completely disagree with me, and they'd say there's a lot more money to be made if you sell prints afterwards and you retain the digital files. But for me personally, it's just not what I want to deal with. Another reason why giving your clients digital files is a good thing is because your clients are going to go out and market for you. They're going to put the pictures on Facebook, or if they have a blog, they're going to put them on their blog, or they're going to copy the pictures and send them off in emails to their friends and family, and then those people are going to put them on Facebook or their website. And that is so much more valuable to me than making a little bit of extra money and giving them some 4x6 prints that they just show their closest friends and family that happen to come over to their house. That's not good marketing this day and age, in my opinion. I think it's much better to get your clients out there working for you. So again, a lot of wedding photographers would disagree with me on this point. I'm losing so much money in prints, and I would probably agree with them. I am losing some money there, but I've come up with another system, and I give away the digital files to the bride and groom. They have all the high-res images, but I also put all of the high-res images on SmugMug and then link that gallery to the slideshow. So what happens is I finish a wedding, I make a slideshow, I give that link to the bride and groom, they share it with all their friends and family, and then while people are watching that slideshow, they can click on a little button on the bottom that says view every image. And if you click on that, you can view all the high-res images. You can even take the pictures, I don't mind, but you can also buy them. I don't have to deal with the printing. SmugMug does all that. I actually have Bayphoto connected to my SmugMug account, so Bayphoto edits all the pictures, prints all the pictures, packages everything, and all I have to do is receive a check at the end of each month. The whole money side of wedding photography, or photography in general, turns so many people off because they think it just kind of cheapens the whole photography thing. You enjoy taking pictures, but I don't want to have to, deal with money. I don't want to have to ask people for money for my services. I would rather just do this because I enjoy it. But that's not the way business works. And if you ever want to own your own business, whether it's photography or anything, you're really going to have to focus on money. And you're going to have to deal with people that want a discount, because there's a lot of people out there that they don't really need a discount, but they need to feel like they got a good deal. So when you first get started as a wedding photographer, you are going to be tempted to offer coupons. You're going to put a coupon on your Facebook page, or maybe you're going to take out an ad and offer 10 or 15% off for wedding photography. I would suggest not doing that. I think that completely cheapens you. I think it makes people assume that you're some budget photographer. And even if you are just getting started and you're a budget photographer, that's not the direction that you want to go. Instead, what I would suggest doing is taking the prices off of your website, and then when people contact you, deal with them on a person-by-person basis. So if you want to lower your prices, if you feel like you might lose the job if your prices aren't a little bit lower, then you can offer them a discount personally. You're not gonna publicize that you discount every wedding that comes your way, but on a case-by-case basis, you get to decide what you want to discount and how much you want to discount. This way you can keep your perceived value very high, but you are still giving discounts. It's really tempting when you're first getting started to just accept any offer. If somebody comes to you and they say, well, your price is say $2,000 for 4 hours, but I've only got $1,000, and you go, man, $1,000 would be good. Okay, I'll do it. You'd be shocked how many times you will still lose that client. It honestly still happens to me today. It just happened to me a few months ago, actually. Somebody was getting married like in a few weeks, and I completely agreed with the offer that they were giving me. They were like, I can't afford your full package, but what about this? And it was a lot lower, and I said, okay, sure. I'm sorry, Lee, we're going with another photographer. And I just have to continue to remind myself that what I did there was I completely cheapened myself. All of a sudden, I seemed like a pushover. It seemed like my prices were just made up because I was willing to lower them to whatever the client wanted. And for whatever reason, the client decided, I'm gonna go with somebody else. I think your best bet is to always compromise, but make the client compromise as well. If you just bend over and say, sure, I'll do whatever you're asking me to do, they will lose all respect for you, and chances are you're not even gonna book the job. When you book a wedding, you're going to need to ask for a deposit. All wedding vendors do this, and it's because you only have so many weekends every year that you can work. And if somebody books you, and then they don't pay you anything, and then they decide, hey, I'm not gonna get married, or hey, I'm just gonna go with somebody else a few weeks before the wedding date, you're not gonna be able to book that date again. You have got to take a deposit with every single wedding that you shoot. Now, you may be wondering, how much of a deposit should I ask for? I personally ask for 1/3, and that's a fairly high price for how much I charge for weddings. I know other photographers in town ask for $1,000, just a flat price, and I know even other photographers that ask for 50%. I would suggest asking for 50% when your prices are lower. If you're only charging $1,500, a $750 deposit really isn't very much. That shouldn't be a problem for any of your clients, and it's going to be enough money to where they really don't want to cancel on you. If you shoot a wedding for $1,000 and you ask for 25%, $250, I just don't think that's enough money, especially if somebody's booking you, a year in advance or something. Get at least 50% for something that cheap, and then that way, if they do end up canceling on you, it's not a total loss. So most wedding photographers today probably do the package thing, which means, the first package is $1,500 and it includes 2 hours of coverage and a small album and some prints, and then the second package is a little bit more, and they go all the way up to, maybe a $10,000 package, something like that. And then other photographers like myself do an à la carte system, where I have everything broken down and you can see exactly how much every little thing costs. There's pluses and minuses to both. Obviously, if you do the package thing, you might be able to upsell your clients because you're going to get them to buy something that they may not have thought that they wanted. The reason that I do the à la carte system now is that I want everything to be as simple as possible. And I was having clients come to me when I did have packages saying, hey, we like your number 3 package, but can we take this off and can we add this? So for me, in the sake of simplicity, I decided to get rid of the packages and just go with an à la carte system. You can go to my website right now even and check out every single thing that I offer, and you can see exactly how much every little detail costs, and you're not required to buy things that you don't want. And if you do want to add something, you can do that as well. So I know this section may be discouraging to a lot of you because you don't care about the money and all you want to do is take pictures, and you want it to be simple. You just want the money to come in, but in terms of negotiating with people or asking for large sums of money, that makes you really uncomfortable. And I would just say, practice it, work on it. You can overcome that. And if you can, build up the confidence to ask for the amount of money that you deserve. Who knows, this might be the way out of that desk job that you have to go to every day. And it is possible to have photography sustain your lifestyle 100%. Well guys, I hope you have enjoyed this excerpt. I know this was a pretty long section and it wasn't the most exciting section being that it was a lot of talking heads. But keep in mind, if you are interested in the full tutorial, we do have a lot of in the field, on location shooting where we teach you everything we know about actually taking photographs at weddings. And you can check out some of the free excerpts where we go into this as well. To learn more about the full tutorial, head over to fstoppers.com/store.